720,000 jobs. Gone. Not during a recession. Not during a war. Not during a pandemic. In 2025, while the stock market was still climbing, while politicians were still using the word resilient to describe the American economy, and right now, today, in 10 specific U.S. states, the consequences of those cuts are arriving faster than any government agency, any mayor, any governor prepared for. We're not talking about a slowdown. We're not talking about a rough quarter. We're talking about communities where the housing market is going into reverse, where schools are losing funding mid-semester, where grocery stores are closing, not because people stopped eating, but because enough people left that keeping the lights on stopped making financial sense. If you live in one of these states, or you love someone who does, what you're about to hear isn't just a news story. It's a warning. And I'll tell you right now, the state that lands at number 1 on this list isn't the one you're expecting. It's collapsing for a reason so structural, so deeply built into its DNA, that economists are saying full recovery could take an entire decade. Stay with me, because this one matters. But before we dive in, if you're new here, hit the subscribe button and leave a comment. I subscribe. And I'll personally welcome you into the family. With that said, let's get started. Before we get into the states, you need to understand why this downturn is different from every other economic shock in recent American history. When a factory closes, economists know the playbook. When a tech company does mass layoffs, the market absorbs it. Venture capital repositions. Talent moves. Cities adjust. But when the federal government, the single largest employer in the United States, pulls back at this scale, the math works differently. The damage goes deeper. And it spreads in ways that don't show up in the headline numbers until it's already too late to stop. Here's why. The Urban Institute published research in early 2025 showing that every single federal job loss creates what economists call a multiplier effect. For every one federal position eliminated, 2.3 additional private sector jobs are put at risk within 12 months. Think about what that actually means on the ground. The contractor who maintains a federal building, the sandwich shop where federal workers grab lunch, the daycare their kids attend in the morning, the dry cleaner, the gas station, the gym, the apartment complex built specifically to house a workforce that no longer exists. It's a chain reaction. And the federal government, whether we like it or not, has been the first link in that chain for communities across this country for decades. When you yank that link, everything downstream trembles. Marcus is 47 years old. He spent 19 years as a federal IT contractor in Northern Virginia. Consistent performance reviews. Never miss a deadline. The kind of employee that any organization would fight to keep. In February of this year, his contract was simply not renewed. No performance issue. No warning. The project he supported was restructured. By April, his mortgage was underwater. I thought I was recession-proof, he told a local Virginia news outlet. Government work. Stable. I literally told my kids, this job is a safe choice. Marcus's story is not the exception. It is a pattern. And that pattern is playing out right now in 10 states, in hundreds of cities, among hundreds of thousands of people who made the same calculation Marcus made, and got the same result. But here's where the story gets more complicated. Because the job losses, that's only the first wave. The housing collapse happening because of those losses, the schools, the transit systems, the social infrastructure quietly eroding, that's the second wave. And almost nobody is covering it. Let's get into the states. State number 10, New Mexico. We start in a place where the pressure is already visible to anyone paying attention. New Mexico. Federal workers make up 22% of New Mexico's entire state payroll. Nearly 1 in 4 working New Mexicans is either directly employed by the federal government or works for a business that exists because of federal spending. The state has 2 economic buffers, tourism and oil production. And here's the problem. Neither one moves fast enough or pays broadly enough to absorb a shock of this size. In Albuquerque's South Valley, a woman named Sandra, 61 years old, Retired postal administrator, has been watching her neighborhood change in real time for the past several months. It's like a slow leak, she said. You don't notice it at first. One neighbor leaves, then another, then the corner store closes because there aren't enough customers. And then one day you look around and realize this isn't temporary. Something actually changed. Urban planners have a term for what Sandra is describing. They call it population thinning. The quiet, gradual departure of economic anchors from a community before the visible crisis ever makes the evening news. New Mexico is in the early stages, and early stages are actually the most dangerous moment, because by the time it commands national attention, the window for easy intervention has already closed. State number 9, Alaska. Alaska operates on a fundamentally different model than every other state in the country. And that difference, the thing that made Alaska unique, has become its most dangerous vulnerability. Alaska has no state income tax, which sounds like a fiscal win until you understand the trade-off. The state budget runs almost entirely on federal funding and oil revenues. When federal support contracts, Alaska doesn't just lose jobs. It loses the operational funding for the infrastructure of daily life. In Anchorage, the state's largest city, 3 of the city's 7 homeless shelters are federally funded. All 3 are currently on closure watch. Read that again. At the exact moment that layoffs are pushing more Alaskans toward crisis support systems, those systems are at risk of disappearing. That's not a policy debate. That's a humanitarian math problem happening in real time and is unfolding in one of the most geographically isolated states in the nation, where just relocate to the next city is not a practical option for most families, where the cost of everything from groceries to heating fuel is already elevated by geography alone. Alaska is not making the national conversation, but it should be. State number 8, Colorado. Now here's where the story starts to get uncomfortable for people who assume they were insulated from this. Colorado. Denver is booming, right? Tech relocations, a thriving outdoor economy, cannabis tax revenue. The Front Range has been one of the economic success stories of the last decade, except 31,000 federal jobs were anchored across Colorado's Front Range. Defense agencies, federal land management bureaus, regional health infrastructure, environmental regulatory offices. And here's what people miss about booming economies. The boom absorbs shocks last. The middle absorbs them first. The coffee shop in Aurora that built its customer base around the federal office 2 blocks away. The apartment complex in Lakewood whose occupancy rate was quietly tied to a workforce that's now gone. The small businesses in Pueblo that were finally growing after years of grinding and are now watching foot traffic drop for reasons they can't fully explain yet. Colorado isn't collapsing, but it's bending. And in economic history, states that bend without deliberate intervention have a documented tendency to snap. State number 7, Missouri. Missouri doesn't make national headlines very often. And in this case, that's a problem. While media attention stays fixed on the coast, St. Louis and Kansas City are bleeding. Quietly, consistently. The Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis released data in March 2025 showing that eviction filings in Missouri metro areas with high federal employment density are up 38% year over year. 38%. That's not a seasonal fluctuation. That's a structural shift showing up in courthouse records. James is 52. He managed facilities for a federal building in Kansas City for 14 years. He knew that building the way a surgeon knows anatomy. Every pipe, every circuit breaker, every mechanical quirk. He was laid off in January. He has been couch surfing between relatives since March, not because he was reckless with money, not because he failed to save, but because his financial plan, like most people's, was built around a job that was supposed to last until retirement. And the math of a sudden stop doesn't give you a soft landing when you have a mortgage, a car payment, and 2 kids in college. I kept thinking something would come through, he said. A contract, a referral, something. And then 3 months passed and I understood nothing is coming. I have to build something completely new. at 52. That sentence, at 52. That sentence is being spoken in living rooms across Missouri right now. But Missouri's story has an important counterpoint, and I want to give it to you because this whole video is about understanding what works, not just what's failing. One Missouri county saw this coming. Washington County partnered with 2 community colleges before the cuts even landed, pre-certifying laid-off federal workers for state infrastructure roles, road crews, water systems, state IT modernization. The program opened its registration and filled in 11 days. 11 days. That's what preparation looks like. Not every state is doing it, which is why this list exists. State number 6, Georgia. Georgia's governor spent significant time in late 2024 citing the state's economic strength. And statistically, he wasn't wrong. But Atlanta's federal ecosystem doesn't get discussed enough outside of policy circles. The CDC's regional satellite offices, FEMA's Southeast Hub, defense contract networks stretching from Warner Robins to Marietta, multiple federal regulatory bodies with significant regional staffing, and all of them are being restructured simultaneously. The term economists use for this is cluster disruption. It's what happens when multiple industries in the same geographic region absorb shocks at the same time, and the buffers that normally exist between sectors stop functioning because they're all under stress simultaneously. It's the difference between one leg of a table breaking and 2 legs breaking at once. The first is manageable. The second changes the entire structural calculation. Georgia isn't on the edge, but the gap between what state leadership is publicly communicating and what residents in federal corridors are experiencing on the ground, that gap is its own warning sign, because gaps like that have a history of closing suddenly. State number 5, Texas. Texas might be the most paradoxical entry on this entire list. And I mean that in the most literal sense. The state that has built its entire political and economic brand around small government, low taxes, and minimal federal dependency, holds the second largest federal civilian workforce in the United States. Over 74,000 jobs at risk in the current restructuring. Fort Worth alone employs more federal agency workers than the entire state of Wyoming. Let that contradiction fully land. Elena is 44. She worked as a bilingual federal caseworker in San Antonio for 11 years. Her job was to help Spanish-speaking residents navigate the systems that exist to catch people when things go wrong. Benefits applications, housing assistance, legal aid referrals. She was laid off this spring. Now she is navigating those same systems herself. I know every form, she said. There was a pause. I know every deadline, every office, every shortcut in the system. And it is still hard. I keep thinking about the people I used to help who don't know any of this. The Brookings Institution's 2025 analysis projects that Texas metro areas could see GDP contraction of up to 1.8% if federal employment losses continue at projected thresholds. In an economy as large as Texas, 1.8% isn't a rounding error. That's real businesses, real households, real consequences. In a state where the political conversation hasn't yet caught up with the economic reality on the ground. State number 4, Maryland. Maryland is where the housing story becomes impossible to look away from. 14% of all Maryland workers are either federal employees or directly federal adjacent. And in the suburbs surrounding Washington, Bethesda, Silver Spring, Rockville, Bowie, specific zip codes are already recording home price declines of 8 to 12% since the start of 2025. 8 to 12% in less than 6 months. For a homeowner who purchased at 2022 peak prices, which thousands of Maryland residents did, that percentage represents the difference between equity and being underwater on a mortgage, the difference between options and no options. The National Association of Realtors reported in their Q1 2025 data that federal employment-dependent zip codes are seeing housing inventory surge at 3 times the national average. Sellers are listing. Buyers are hesitating. Properties are sitting. The market is holding its breath, and markets that hold their breath long enough eventually have to exhale. David and Priya are a couple in the Baltimore, D.C. corridor. Both worked in federal health agencies. Both received layoff notices within 6 weeks of each other. Their mortgage is still there. We did everything correctly, Priya said. We didn't overextend. We bought responsibly. We saved. And now we are burning through the savings that were supposed to pay for our children's education. If you're in Maryland right now, or in any of the states on this list, financial counselors in these communities are giving consistent advice. Do not make major financial decisions for at least 90 days. Don't sell in a panic. Don't relocate on impulse. Know where your municipality's emergency rental assistance portal is before you need it. These programs fill quickly and have documentation requirements. Knowing the system in advance means you can move fast if your situation changes. State number 3, Washington State. Seattle is a city of genuine contradictions right now. New Amazon campuses, billion-dollar tech announcements, a skyline that has been under construction for a decade straight, and simultaneously, 29,000 federal jobs disappearing, federal health infrastructure, regional environmental agencies, land management offices, regulatory bodies that employed thousands of highly skilled workers who are now, all at once, in the same job market, competing for the same positions. What's happening in Washington State isn't a story about poverty. It's a story about the hollowing of the middle. The top is fine. Tech wealth insulates the top. The bottom has safety nets, frayed and overburdened, but present. It's the middle, the federal worker, the mid-level contractor, the small business owner whose revenue depended on that workforce, that is being compressed from both sides simultaneously. Drive through the suburbs of Tacoma right now. Every third house has a for sale sign. Half of them have been listed for 90 days with no serious offers. Not because the houses are undesirable, because the buyers who would have purchased those homes are the same people who just lost their jobs. That's not a housing market cooling down. That's a housing market going quiet. And quiet, in a market that should be active, is more frightening than loud. State number 2, Virginia. We've arrived at ground zero. Northern Virginia alone housed more than 40 federal agencies and over 200,000 federal contractors. Crystal City, Rosslyn, Tyson's Corner. The entire economic architecture of Northern Virginia was not built around federal employment. It was built from it. Federal spending wasn't a component of the local economy. It was a foundation. Commercial real estate vacancies in Arlington are up 19% since January 2025. Apartment lease renewals are down 24%. Restaurants that survived COVID, that ground through 2 years of restrictions and uncertainty, are closing now, not because of a virus, because the lunch crowd that sustained them no longer exists. Crystal City used to have a sound to it, the ambient frequency of a corridor full of people working, keyboards, conversations, the distant rumble of the metro platform. You could feel the density of economic activity just standing in the lobby of an office building. Now those corridors echo. Patricia is 58 years old, 22 years as a Defense Department analyst. Her pension is intact. She's among the fortunate. But her neighborhood's property value has declined approximately $2,000 per month since January. I'm not worried about myself, she said. I'm worried about my neighbor. He's 34. He bought his home last year. He doesn't have a pension protecting him. What does this look like for him in 2 years? That question, what does this look like in 2 years, is a question every financial advisor, every city planner, every elected official in Virginia should be answering publicly right now. Some aren't, and that silence is its own kind of statement. State number 1, Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. Technically not a state, but economically, it functions as one, except with a structural flaw that no actual state shares. 33% of all jobs in Washington, D.C. are directly or indirectly federal. There is no agriculture, no manufacturing base, no port economy, no energy sector, no major corporate headquarters that exist independently of government contracts or government proximity. Washington, D.C. was designed, specifically, deliberately, architecturally, to be the federal city. It was never built to survive without the federal government. And nobody, in a century of city planning, ever thought it would have to. The 2025 numbers are staggering in a way that requires slow reading. Office vacancy rate, 22.8%, the highest ever recorded in the city's history. Metro ridership is down 31%. Restaurant closures are up 44% year over year. Entire blocks of retail that were occupied 18 months ago are dark. Kevin is 35. He ran a youth program in Southeast DC. After-school tutoring, college prep support, mental health resources for teenagers who had nowhere else to go and no one else showing up for them. The program was federally funded. The funding was eliminated. The program closed. 200 kids lost their after-school support structure. Not because the program failed. Not because Kevin failed. Not because those teenagers stopped needing help. Because a line item in a federal budget changed. That's the full distance between the decision and the consequence. A spreadsheet cell and 200 kids standing outside a locked door. The George Washington University Economic Policy Institute's 2025 projections show DC's GDP at risk of contraction exceeding 4.1%. For context, a 4% GDP contraction is depression-level territory for a city-sized economy. That's not a recession. That's a restructuring of what a place fundamentally is. And here's what stayed with me after all the research for this video. Kevin didn't just lose a job. He lost a purpose, a reason to be somewhere specific, a room full of teenagers who needed him, specifically him, to show up. And 720,000 people across these 10 states understand exactly what that sentence means right now. That's not a statistic. That's a generation of Americans being told that the structure they organize their lives around no longer exists, and being given very little guidance on what comes next. The hidden second wave. Here's what every major headline about this story is missing. The layoffs are the first wave. The second wave is quieter, more diffuse, and in many ways more damaging, because it's harder to point to, harder to legislate around, harder to see coming until it's already arrived. In communities where federal employment concentration exceeds 15%, we're seeing grocery stores close. Not dramatically, one at a time, because the sustained customer base thinned enough that the margin disappeared. We're seeing schools lose enrollment-based funding, not because families left overnight, but because enough left that per pupil allocations dropped below operational minimums. We're seeing transit systems cut routes, buses, metro lines, local rail, because ridership revenue no longer covers operating costs. And when transit cuts happen, the people who depended on transit to get to their jobs, the jobs that weren't federal, the jobs that survived the first wave, lose their ability to reach work. And the second wave takes them too. The Pew Research Center documented this cycle in a major 2024 study. Their finding: communities with more than 15% federal employment dependency take an average of 7.3 years to fully recover from a major federal workforce reduction. 7 years, not 7 months. 7 years. That is the real timeline. That's what nobody is putting in the headline. What's actually working? Now, because this video is not about despair, and because the most useful thing I can give you is not fear but information, let's talk about what's actually working in some of these states. 3 places on this list are responding in ways that are specific enough and early enough that they deserve direct attention. Colorado created what they're calling a Federal Transition Fund, a state-level retraining program built specifically to move laid-off federal workers into state infrastructure roles: road maintenance, water system management, state technology modernization projects. The same skills redirected into state employment. The program was funded by reallocating a portion of cannabis tax revenue. It's not a complete solution, but it is a real one. Georgia piloted a housing bridge program in 3 metro counties, offering 90-day rent stabilization specifically for displaced federal workers during employment transition. Private landlords who participate receive a modest property tax incentive. The program is working well enough that 2 additional counties have applied to join. Texas, perhaps most surprisingly, is seeing a natural market correction emerge, with former federal workers transitioning into private defense contractor roles. Same security clearances, same technical competencies. In many cases, higher salaries. The State Workforce Commission is now actively building and advertising that pipeline. It won't absorb every displaced worker, but it's absorbing some, and some is better than none. The lesson across all 3: active intervention outperforms passive waiting. Every time, in every documented economic contraction, Communities that organize a response early recover faster than communities that wait for conditions to improve on their own. 720,000 people did not see this coming. Some of them are Marcus, rebuilding a financial plan at 47 that he thought was finished. Some of them are Patricia, watching a neighborhood she's invested 22 years in quietly change around her. Some of them are Kevin, standing in a closed youth center trying to figure out what to tell 200 teenagers who still need somewhere to be. And some of them, and I think this is why you watch this far, might be in your city, in your neighborhood, or closer than that. The 10 states on this list are not beyond recovery. I want to be absolutely clear about that. These are not broken places. They are places at a turning point. And turning points are exactly that. A point, a moment where the path forward is not yet fixed, where decisions made right now by individuals, by city councils, by state legislatures, still have the power to change the outcome. But turning points don't wait for convenient timing. They arrive on their own schedule, and they demand a response. Here's the question I want to leave open, because I think it's the one that actually matters. If your city was on this list, if your zip code was one of the ones quietly changing right now, would you stay? Would you find the opportunity inside the disruption, the gap that a restructuring always creates for people paying close attention? Or would you start building an exit plan? There's no wrong answer, but there is an important one, and it's yours. Drop your state in the comments. Tell me what you're seeing on the ground where you live, because the most important data in this entire story isn't in any research report. It's in what real people are actually experiencing right now. And I read every comment.